In 2 years of running facial recognition at this port of entry, the system flagged 11,214 people. I checked every single one tonight. And I found something that is going to end careers. Starting with mine. My name does not matter. What matters is that I've been a border agent for 7 years. I believe in the work, not the politics around the work, the actual work, verifying documents, checking manifests, making sure the people crossing this border are who they say they are. I am good at my job because I do not make assumptions. I look at the evidence, I verify, I confirm. 3 years ago, the agency rolled out a new facial recognition system, Atlas Automated Threat and Liability Assessment System. The pitch was simple: faster processing times, reduced human error, an objective system that could not be biased because it was not human. I believed that. I believed it completely. I was wrong. It started with a Tuesday shift. Routine. A family of 4 from Brazil came through. Mother, father, 2 children. Valid documents, valid visas, no criminal record, no watch list connection. Atlas flagged all 4 of them as high risk. I processed the flag. I followed protocol. I sent them to secondary screening. They were held for 6 hours, released with no action. That happens. False positives happen. Except it happened again on Thursday. A software engineer from Nigeria, valid documents, valid work visa, no record of any kind. Atlas flagged him as a high-level threat, held for 11 hours, released. And then I started noticing something. Not because I was looking for it, because the pattern was too loud to not hear. I went back through 30 days of flags, then 60 days, then 90. I was building a spreadsheet I told myself was routine quality control. But quality control was not why I could not stop. Here is what 90 days of flag data looks like. White European travelers, flagged by Atlas, 14 times, 14 flags in 90 days. All 14 confirmed as genuine risk indicators. All 14 resulted in actionable findings. 0 false positives. Now, non-white travelers, flagged by Atlas, 611 times in the same 90 days. Of those 611 flags, 19 resulted in actionable findings. 19. The remaining 592 were false positives. People held for hours, some held for days. People with valid documents, valid visas, valid reasons for being here, flagged as high-level threats by a system that was supposed to be objective. I ran the numbers again. I ran them a 3rd time. The ratio was 43-1. For every 1 false positive generated against a white traveler, the system produced 43 false positive flags against non-white travelers. I sat with that number for a long time. 43-1. That is not noise. That is not a bug. That is a pattern. And patterns do not emerge from machines by accident. Patterns are taught. I opened the Atlas system documentation, specifically the section on training data. Who built the dataset the system learned from? Whose faces it was trained to recognize as threats? Whose faces it was trained to pass? The training data was approved by a single signature. Deputy Director Carl Merritt. The approval was dated 26 months ago, 3 months before Atlas went live. I looked at the approval signature for a long time. Then I opened the detention records. The authorization signatures on every wrongful detention for 2 years. Deputy Director Carl Merritt. Same desk, same pen, same name. I should have stopped there. I should have filed a report and let someone else follow the thread. But I had spent 7 years believing in a system, and I needed to know how far the rot went. So I pulled the transfer records. The people flagged as high-level threats. The ones who were not just held and released. The ones who were transferred. Out of the port of entry, into other facilities. I expected to see federal detention centers, government facilities, The kind of facilities that have oversight and accountability, and someone you can call if something goes wrong. What I found instead was a company name, ClearPath Detention Services. A private company, running 17 detention facilities across 6 states. 11,000 people transferred to ClearPath facilities in 2 years. Not 11,000 total detainees. 11,000 people who were flagged by Atlas as high-level threats, who were transferred specifically to private facilities. I looked up ClearPath Detention Services, founded 3 years ago, 1 year before Atlas was deployed. Contract with the federal government awarded through a competitive bidding process, except there were only 2 bidders, ClearPath, and a company that had filed for dissolution 6 months before the bid closed. 1 real bidder, guaranteed contract, guaranteed revenue. I looked at the shareholder structure. ClearPath Detention Services, primary shareholder, through a shell company registered in Delaware. Deputy Director Carl Merritt. I sat in front of my screen for a long time. 7 years. 7 years I have been processing flags. I followed the protocol. I trusted the system. I sent people to secondary screening because a machine told me to. I signed transfer authorizations because the documentation said high-level threat. I was the instrument. The system needed people like me. People who believed in the work. People who did not ask why a Brazilian family with 4 valid documents was a high-level threat. People who processed the flag and followed protocol and went home and did not look at the spreadsheet. 11,214 people. In 2 years. Flagged by a system that was designed to flag them. Held by a company that was designed to hold them. For profit. And I had spent 7 years being the mechanism that made it work. I had options. Option 1. File an internal report. Send it up the chain. Except the chain leads to the desk with the signature. The same signature that approved the training data. The same signature on 11,000 detention transfers. The same name on the shareholder registry of the company those people were transferred to. Internal report goes to Merritt. Merritt controls what happens to internal reports. That report disappears. And so do I. Option 2. Walk away. Pretend I did not run the spreadsheet. Go back to processing flags. Follow protocol. Trust the system. Except the system is not a system anymore. The system is a fraud. And I know what it is, which means going back to it is not following protocol. It is participating. Option 3. The data on this screen tells a story. 43 to 1. 11,000 detainees, 1 shareholder. A story like that needs an audience that cannot be silenced, cannot be transferred, cannot be made to sign a non-disclosure agreement, cannot be reassigned to a desk where the spreadsheet goes away. There is one kind of person who fits that description. I know a journalist. We went to the same university. She covers federal oversight for a paper that is not owned by anyone connected to anyone in this building. I have not spoken to her in 4 years. I am going to speak to her tonight. I copied the data to an encrypted drive. The spreadsheet, the flag records, the training data approval, the detention transfer authorizations, the ClearPath shareholder registry. All of it. 7 gigabytes of 2 years of evidence. I put the drive in my pocket. I logged out of the system. I picked up my bag. I walked past 12 colleagues who did not look up from their screens. I walked through the security door. I walked to my car. I sat in my car for 4 minutes. Then I called her. She answered on the second ring. I said, "I need to send you something tonight." She said, "What is it?" I said, 2 years of evidence that a facial recognition system was designed to target non-white travelers and route them into private detention facilities owned by the man who designed the system. There was a silence. She said, "How solid is it?" I said, 43 to 1 ratio over 2 years, 11,000 detentions, 1 shareholder. She said, "Send it now." I sent it while we were still on the phone. She said, "I need you on record." I said, I know. She said, you understand what that means? I said, I understand. She said, your job. I said, yes. She said, potentially more than your job. I said, I know what it means. I have spent 7 years believing in a system. Tonight I found out what the system actually was. Going back is not an option I have anymore. She said, I will call you at 6 a.m. I said, I will be awake. I looked at the building through the windscreen. Every light on. Everyone still working. Nobody knowing yet that the spreadsheet existed. Nobody knowing yet that someone had walked out with 7 gigabytes. They would know by morning. The story ran 4 days later. Front page. Online within 6 hours of publication. 11 million views in the first 24 hours. The kind of number that cannot be buried. Merritt was placed on administrative leave pending investigation within 72 hours. ClearPath Detention Services suspended its federal contract 1 week later. A Senate subcommittee announced an investigation into Atlas and its procurement process 3 weeks after that. I was suspended the morning after the story ran, pending investigation into unauthorized data removal. I accepted the suspension. I sat at home. I drank coffee. I read the coverage. I thought about 11,000 people, flagged by a machine, transferred to a facility, by an agent who believed in the system, by me. I do not know what comes next for me. I know what should come next for Merritt. And I know that 43 to 1 is a number that is not going away. It is in the story now. And stories do not disappear. I know that too.